but is simply the expression of the inner potency, the inner need, the inner direction in which the spirit monad is set. And the same is true of all monads. So to say they're windowless means that there are no causal connections between monads, whether in relationship to thought or in relationship to overt activity. No causal connections. But then you have to go one step further and ask, well, then, how do they exist? What's their source of energy? And sometimes Leibniz uses the term creation and says God creates them. But in other places, he tries to be more descriptive and uses the term fulguration. He says they're continuously being fulgurated by God. Now, I'd bet you've never run across the term fulguration before. Nor had I when I first read Leibniz. But my Webster dictionary back then, and I assume it still does, says that fulguration has to do with generating energy. It's used, for instance, when you strike a match and it catches flame. You are fulgurating the heat, the light, you see. So it's the idea of that the energy, that their particular degree of force is constantly being generated and infused by God. God is the power source, giving existence. But in the act of giving existence to monads, he gives them the degree of force which gives them their individual existence of that nature. And so rather than the conception of creation, which was becoming apparent in the beginnings of deism, the view that God created and then things become self-existent and self-operative, God is continuously imparting existence. If you like, this again is the thing that the medievals said. Thomas Aquinas, which is why when Aquinas argues from the order of cause and effect in the cosmos to the first cause, he doesn't simply mean, in fact he doesn't particularly mean in that proof, the first in the whole series of causes, but rather a meta-cause that continually empowers the whole causal series, at whatever stage it is, you see. So God is the one who not only initiates existence, but who sustains existence by continuing to impart existence. And Leibniz is simply reiterating that within the conceptual scheme which he's developing. Fulguration by God. Somebody was asking since last time, isn't this, Stumpf seems to take it as if monads are, as it were, of the very being of God? Is this another kind of Spinozistic pantheism, you see? And I'd argue no. No. Because he doesn't claim that these are eternal. He claims that their force, their energy, their existence is given by God. Yes, continuously. But not that God is the totality of them. It's not a pantheism. So it's his attempt to explain the traditional Judeo-Christian conception of creation. Now, even though each of these monads is windowless, no causal connections, its existence is sustained by God, Its nature is what it is continuously because of God. But having that individual nature knowing its place in the whole, Leibniz is able to say that each, by virtue of its own essence, mirrors the whole. Each is, as it were, a microcosm of the whole, you see. So if you understand your own individual nature in terms of these attributes of apperception and appetition, you have in that a glimpse of what the whole is like in terms of appetition and apperception, you see. So this metaphor of each knowing its place, he takes rather literally. The nature of the thing is such, the nature of the individual monad is such, that its own nature mirrors what it needs to be in order to fill this particular slot in the whole, as if it's a distinct, unique piece in a jigsaw puzzle that wouldn't fit anywhere else. And so in its own nature, there are implications for everything else. So each mirrors the whole. Now, let me pause there and see if you're digesting it. Do you get the picture of what he's saying? Ruth?
When I say there's no causal connection between monads, is that like Spinoza's, that everything comes from in the vertical relationship and there's no interaction across the extension and thought?
Yes, yes. With this exception that we caught last time, that where Spinoza has a double aspect theory, so that thought and extension are two sides of the same thing, Leibniz has different entities, so that that which thinks is spirit monad, that which is extended is a composite of bare monads, perhaps with soul monad, but they're different things. Yeah. So we speak of Leibniz as a parallelism, never meeting, but you can't really say of Spinoza, since they're really two sides of one thing. Right. But otherwise, apart from the conceptual scheme, the notion that there's no causal interaction is similar. John? No?
I'm a little bit confused about the final conclusion that each mirrors the whole. I'm trying to go back to your conclusions 2 and 3. It seems that given the concept of thisness and a windowless thing, how could I have a perception that I would mirror the whole or that anything else mirrors?
Yeah, you see, and there I think you're probably playing on a conception of thisness, of individuality, which suggests that every individual is absolutely unique. Now, that modern conception simply is false. Now, it's false for Leibniz, and I think it's false anyway. You know, we throw around the term unique so loosely. You know, all snowflakes are unique, they say. Well, we imply that uniqueness means it has boundless value because it's unique. But, you know, not every snowflake has boundless value. It's not uniqueness that gives things value. You see. But in any case, for Leibniz, the term unique would be stressing any lack of close similarity. You see, suppose you have an identical twin. Now, you're not completely identical. Leibniz talks about the identity of indiscernibles. If you have two things completely indiscernible, one from the other, then you don't have two things, you have one and the same. The identity of indiscernibles. But an individual is different from another, like an identical twin, in some infinitesimal way. And because the differences are infinitesimal, you see, you have an immediate understanding of those who are like you in certain ways. Now, the further you reach out, admittedly, there are not the immediate approximations, but there is still some analogy. So that in the hierarchy of being, if you are here, oops, I put you as a low-grade spirit. That wasn't my intention. But by virtue of being there, you have some sense of affinity for animals. Yeah, you find yourself sympathizing with dogs, especially your pet dog that you know, you see. And some people write papers and books about animal rights, you see, animal rights. Interesting how far the analogy will take us, you see. And similarly, by virtue of spirit beings, humans have some understanding of what God must be like when we think of God as a person in whose image we are made. Okay? So simply by virtue of the analogy, you can say that, I mirror in my nature something of the nature of animals, of God, of living things generally, of physical things, you see. And add to that the notion that since nothing else can fill the slot in the overall picture that I'm filling, you see, by virtue of the principle of plenitude, since nothing else can fill the slot, then there is in my nature an echo of the whole of being. You think? Yeah.
So the windowless idea is simply a causal one, and so as far as perception and language and all those things are concerned, you can interrelate because of analogy.
No, wait a minute. Perception, if there you mean sense perception, where we get external stimuli, no. If you mean conception, and incidentally, I notice those words are appearing mixed up in the outlines. Descartes as well, Hobbes as well. Perception is usually used to refer to sense perception. Sense perception. Whether it be the inner sense or the outer sense. Sense perception. Okay? That is to say, awareness of particulars and of particular qualities. Okay. Conception is used to refer to concepts, general concepts, perhaps abstract ideas, you see. So keep the two distinct. Incidentally, the term sensation is different again. Sensation is used to refer to the particular senses and what they deliver. A sensation of light, a sensation of heat,